Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well and ready to explore a fascinating aspect of the English language. Today, we're going to delve into a common question that many learners of English often wonder about, especially when trying to sound more fluent and natural. The question is about two little words that seem quite similar at first glance, may and might. These words are often used interchangeably by some people, but in reality, they have their own functions, uses, and nuances that are important to understand if you want to communicate with clarity and precision. So let's talk about what sets them apart and how to use them in the way that native English speakers do in everyday conversations. First, let's begin with the word may. Now, may is traditionally used to ask for permission in a polite and formal manner. Think back to your early school days. If you needed to leave the classroom for a moment, perhaps to use the restroom, the most polite way to ask your teacher would have been to say, "May I go to the restroom?" It's proper, respectful, and very traditional. However, in modern spoken English, especially among native speakers, this phrase has become less common in casual interactions. Most people now tend to use can instead, even though technically can refers to ability. So when a student says, "Can I go to the bathroom?" what they're really asking is not whether they are physically capable of doing it, but rather if they're allowed to go. The context makes the meaning clear, even if the grammar isn't perfect. This shift in usage reflects how language evolves with time and becomes more relaxed and flexible. That said, if you want to sound natural in your everyday English, you might want to use alternatives that are more commonly spoken. Instead of saying may I or can I, most native speakers prefer phrases like could I or do you mind if I. These expressions are softer, more polite, and feel more casual without being too formal. For example, you could say, could I step out for a moment, or, do you mind if I take a quick break? These sound more genuine and are often better received, especially in workplace settings or friendly conversations. Let's say you're in a meeting and realize you need to leave a few minutes early. You might say to your colleagues, "Hey, do you mind if I head out a bit early? I've got something scheduled right after this." Or you could say, "Could I leave a little before we wrap up? I have an appointment to get to." These kinds of phrases are what native speakers really use in daily communication, and they're far more natural than relying on may or might when asking for permission. Now, let's move on to the word might. This word carries a different meaning and is used not for asking permission but to express possibility. When you use might, you're talking about something that could happen, but you're not really sure if it will. It's used to show uncertainty or to suggest that there is a chance, even if it's a small one. Imagine someone asks you if you would ever consider going skydiving. If you're not completely opposed to it but not actively planning it either, you might respond by saying, "Well, I might try it someday." It's a way of saying it's possible, but you're leaving room for doubt. You could also say maybe instead of might, as in maybe I'll go skydiving one day. Both expressions indicate uncertainty, but they're commonly used in spoken English when people don't want to give a definite yes or no. What's interesting is that both may and might are modal verbs. This means they work in a specific grammatical structure. One important rule is that we never place the word to after may or might when using them before another verb. So, saying something like may I to go or might I to go is incorrect and should be avoided. The correct structure is simply may I go or I might go. The verb comes right after the modal without the word to in between. This same rule also applies to could, which is another modal verb. You don't say could I to go. You say could I go. These small grammatical points make a big difference in how natural and fluent your English sounds. Although grammar books and textbooks might still teach may and might as useful options, the truth is that in real-life communication, especially in casual conversations and modern workplaces, you're much more likely to hear people using could and maybe instead. The phrases may I and might I have started to sound a bit outdated or overly formal, and they're not something most people use in casual speech anymore. For example, saying might I go to the restroom would sound strange to most native speakers, possibly even humorous or sarcastic, simply because it's so rarely used. So the key takeaway here is to understand the meaning and purpose of these words, but also to recognize how language is actually spoken today. May is often reserved for very formal contexts or written English. Might is useful when you want to show a possibility, but even then, you might find yourself replacing it with maybe or I think I might. If you want to ask permission naturally, go with could I or do you mind if I. These sound polite, professional, and friendly, and they'll help you blend more smoothly into English-speaking environments. Also, as you keep practicing and listening to how native speakers talk, you'll notice these patterns more and more. Try to mimic these expressions in your daily use, whether you're speaking in meetings, chatting with friends, or asking someone for a favor. The more you use them, the more natural they'll feel. Remember, language learning is not only about knowing what's correct on paper, but also about knowing what's actually used in the real world. So keep practicing, keep listening, and most importantly, don't be afraid to make mistakes. That's how we learn. By making small errors and correcting ourselves, we build confidence and fluency over time. So go ahead and try out these expressions today. Whether it's could I, do you mind if I, or even just maybe, using these phrases will help you sound more like a native speaker and less like you're reading from a textbook. Keep going, stay curious, and you'll continue to improve every day.